Okay, I want you to stop doing some of these things that are seemingly innocent and little, and maybe you don't even realize it. If your goal is to lose weight, lose body fat, then let me show you how you are easily likely consuming in excess of 1,000 sneaky calories per day. We're gonna talk about it because let me tell you, I was guilty of these too. These tiny habits are costing you your results. So let's dive in. Let's take a step back. For those of you that are new here, my name is Diane. I've been in the health and fitness space for over 17 years. I'm an IFBB bodybuilding pro, which also makes me a professional dieter. And I'm a personal trainer, I'm a health coach, and I have been tracking macros and calories for a very long time. I've been 200 pounds. I have professionally dieted my whole professional bodybuilding life. I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I've been shredded, I have been obsessive, I've hated my body, I now love my body. I've had unhealthy eating behaviors and everything in between. All right, now I'm gonna give you a little bit of story. There was a time that I call back before I knew better. And this is when I did meal plans, and this was actually before I started prep. So I was like downloading meal plans off of like forums or the back of magazines. I was ripping them out and trying to go haphazardly. I remember at one time getting a meal plan at the doctor's office that I worked for because we had some patients that needed to lose weight very quickly, and they had things like the cabbage soup diet. I remember being like, I'm going to try this and see if I can lose some weight, right? And so I would do these meal plans. I would generally lose, I don't know, a handful of pounds, and I would get frustrated at some point, right? There'd be a point of diminishing returns, and it wasn't because like I had lost so much weight that my body was like, no, you're good. We can't lose anymore. It was just because I was doing some dumb shit. So I would get frustrated. I would quit, and I would usually blame it on the meal plan. I'd be like, oh, that meal plan doesn't work for me, which in hindsight, those meal plans were trash anyways, because they were often incredibly restrictive. However, the point is that even when I was following, or at least what I thought was following these meal plans, I was actually committing some diet sins. I hopped diet to diet very frequently because I would be on one diet and I would stick to it. And then again, I would be like, oh, this diet doesn't work. And it got really frustrating. And then the light bulb went off when I started competing because I had to get very clear as to what am I really consuming. So let's talk about the things that I was doing wrong and that I see a lot of clients do wrong. And maybe this is something that you could be like, oh, didn't think about those things, right? Simple things. We're going to list them off, and I'm going to give you their calorie counts so you can feel viscerally the impact that if you were to do these things that I'm going to list off entirely in a day, how quickly they would pull you off track for your fat loss goals. Okay. Number one was I would easily just like butter my toast, right? It'd be like, oh, you can have a slice of bread or, 2 pieces of bread or whatever. And I would have bread and I'd be like, like who eats dry bread? That's weird. So I would slather on some butter or cream cheese, right? And butter on your toast will easily rack you up 100 calories. No big deal, yes say. Well, the day goes on because this, my friends, is just breakfast. And then it would be, oh, I'm going to have a glass of orange juice. What's the big deal? Orange juice is healthy. I can't get fat drinking orange juice. Au contraire, mon frere. Glass of OJ, easily 105-ish calories, right? So like we can get a little calorie calculator going on over here of cha-ching, there's a couple hundred calories already. Then let's move on. Oftentimes, I was working in the medical field back before I knew better for almost 10 years. And oftentimes I would roll into my office manager's office and guess what she had on her desk? Like clockwork, a jar of M&Ms. And I would reach in and grab a handful. And let me tell you, it usually wasn't one handful. It was usually one handful before lunch, one handful after lunch, and then sometimes after that little afternoon slump hits because, I was just pounding back tons of sugar all day, I'd grab a third handful. So each of these handfuls easily 120 calories. Now, let's just be gentle on ourselves and say that I only did one, so 120 calories. Then let's move on to dinner. I'd get home, I would start meal prepping my chicken or whatever I was eating and easily dumping in to the skillet a nice copious drizzle of olive oil. But olive oil is healthy, you say. Well, while it is healthy, it still contains calories. And if you eat an excess of calories, you will continue to gain weight or you will lose none at all. It doesn't matter if it is healthy. It doesn't matter if it is the healthiest food on the planet. If you eat too much of anything and it takes you over your calorie requirement, you are going to continue to gain body fat and or not see any progress. Then let's talk about my almost daily habit of stopping at either the gas station or at a grocery store on the way home, sometimes even because I did not respect my caffeine boundaries at that time. And I would run in and I would get myself one of those glass jars of Starbucks Frappuccinos, right? Like the little refrigerated ones that you just grab and you're like, that just sounds so yummy. Quick bottled latte at the gas station easily packs on 290 calories. Very easily, almost 300 calories. Let's talk about sandwiches, right? I would make sandwiches thinking like I was being healthy. I'm having a turkey sandwich with like lettuce and tomato and onions and whatever, and my baked chips. And then I would slather on some mayonnaise because who eats a sandwich without schmear, right? Like, I know it's not schmear, but like without some spread, right? Like you need some lube, you need some food lube on that sandwich. A slather of mayonnaise, 100 calories. Then the last one on my list, and let me tell you, this list is incredibly exhaustive, my friends, but these are just some of the offenders that I know were very large in my journey of knowing that, okay, when I look back, these are the things that held me back. The last thing, and it's an easy one to abuse, is a sprinkle of cheese. A sprinkle of cheese here, a sprinkle of cheese there. Oh, it's just a little pinch. It's just a little pinch, right? Every sprinkle of cheese easily about 80 to 85 calories, right? I'm just ballparking here, but you get the idea. So if you take a tally of all those things, which I easily did on a daily basis, this will bring you close to 1,000 calories. These types of foods are commonly forgotten because they're an oversight, right? It's not something that's largely visible, right? A sprinkle of cheese is just like on top of your food, slather of mayo, you're drinking stuff. A lot of times liquid calories get untracked with our clients that I noticed. So when you add them up, it is a significant amount of calories. Now you might be thinking, Diane, it's just 1,000 calories. Well, when you are trying to lose weight or trying to lose body fat, and let's say that your calories are at 1,500 and you are easily adding on an extra 1,000. Now you're around 2,500 calories per day. Now, this will easily keep you at a perceived plateau, or you might see that scale start to bump up over the course of some days, right? So this is why I really stress the importance of getting used to tracking your food. Now, caveat, I don't track my food anymore. I used these years as useful lessons for me to be able to understand. And now I'm incredibly mindful and aware of when I eat a meal of what goes into that meal. What is it cooked in? Is it breaded? Is it fried? What's on top? What sauces? What am I drinking? Right? All of these things I have an awareness around because I did the work, because I tracked for years, probably well over 10 years. I tracked and I made sure I understood what serving sizes look like, what I, was forgetting sometimes, because the worst thing that you can do is retro track. So for those of you that count macros or track macros, which I know a lot of our online clients do, it is poison if you retro track. Let me just tell you, and I know, life is busy and you forget, but I'm going to give you some tools for that in just a little bit. Now, these are common mistakes when you're new to tracking. So if you're like, oh shit, she's talking to me, it's okay. There's no shame in your lack of tracking game. It's just now that you know better, it's time to do better. And my friends, it is going to require that you do a little bit of work. And I know that work sucks, and learning a new app is disorienting and frustrating. Trust me, I'm an old person. Not really. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s, and if I have to learn another piece of software, I'm going to rip all the curls right out of my head. Like, I don't want to learn another app, another software, another bell or whistle, right? I get that. However, there are times when you're like, this is going to be a season. right? Like when we launched the Goddess Body Project, a lot of our girls will want to learn how to macro track and do macros and things like that. And that's like a season, right? Like that's a season where you're going to be really mindful, really diligent. You're going to track, you're going to do your best. You're going to make mistakes, all those things. But throughout that process, you're going to learn a lot. And I know you might be thinking, I'm at the age where I just don't want to learn anymore. I don't want to add one more thing to my plate. And to that, I say, you will get some incredible insights of your habits and the things that you aren't doing if you give yourself just that permission and grace to track for 12 weeks. Okay. Now, let's dive into some practical tips for you guys that I feel will help you sort of decode this and get your juices flowing with like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Okay. First tip is you need to read labels before you eat. So flip it over. And I know nutrition labels can be intimidating and they can be confusing for some people. And you want to look at a couple things. One is the most important, which is if it's a package of something. I'm going to give you a prime example. Y'all know Lenny and Larry. All right. They make those delicious, well, some of them are delicious and some of them taste like booty hole, but they make those delicious macadamia. That's my favorite. White chocolate macadamia protein cookies. Okay. They're these giant cookies. And when you flip it over, that serving size, and I wish I would have been prepared for this, but the serving size is 2. So what that means is when you look at the label, it says, I'm guessing, but I feel like it's 280 calories. Okay. It'll say 280 calories. Well, in your head, you're like, oh, great. This is a great little snack. It's got all kinds of protein, 280 calories. No. That's 280 calories for half of the cookie. And I know some of you are internally screaming inside because you just realized you've been eating a whole cookie this whole time. Yeah, welcome. That was me. When you look at the serving size, you need to be aware of that. Even if there aren't 2 cookies in there, it doesn't mean that cookie isn't worth 2 servings. So I don't know about you, but like who eats a half of that cookie? Like I've done that a few times, but I just want to kill the whole cookie. I mean, that's like trying to eat half of a crumble cookie. Like you just want to eat the whole thing. Okay. So you got to check that. That's super important. Serving size. And if it is for 2, 3, or 4, you need to do the math and figure out how much you're consuming. And then you also have to weigh and measure or figure out how much of that serving size you're consuming, right? So for something like that cookie, that's easy. You just split it in half and then right? Like I'm eating 280 calories. Don't, quote me on that. But then you haven't consumed almost 500 calories. So this is an easy mistake that we see a lot of people make. The second one is what I was already starting to mention, which is you need to weigh and measure your portions. So this is annoying and I hate it. And I have had probably 5 to 6 food scales over the course of my macro tracking years. And it's annoying. And it's also a great tool to show you what you're doing wrong and also what you're doing right so you can repeat those right behaviors, right? Like when you get used to it and you get good at it, you start to play a game with yourself. You're like, oh, I wonder if this piece of chicken is really 4 ounces. And then you're like, you cut it up and then you like, the plate is on the little scale and you clear it out and you put it on there and you're like, damn, I'm good, right? And then you start building in some confidence in your ability to eyeball things, but that takes practice, like with anything. So when clients, come to us, and trust me, I was that person where I was like, nothing's working, right? Like nothing's working. And I would have to track for a week. Like if I just felt like I'm doing the things, but like nothing's working, I'd be like, all right, bitch, you need to track for a week and like really have a reality check. And then I'd realize, oh, yeah, this snuck in and that snuck in. And well, that explains a lot. So you got to get skilled at that. Now, keep it simple. If you have never weighed anything and the thought of like purchasing a food scale or just having one more gizmo or gadget is like, I'm not going to do it. Y'all have measuring spoons and you have measuring cups laying around. I know you do. Those are not my favorite, but guess what? It's better than nothing. So let that be good enough instead of being, well, I don't have a food scale, so I just can't do it, right? No, go get your food measuring utensils and just use those for starters if you're using and cooking foods that aren't in a package, okay? This will help you get more skilled at knowing exactly how much you're eating with time. And it just, honestly, the best thing that it does for you is it makes you so much more mindful because you can be like, oh, okay, I get it now, right? It's like you start to understand what habits that you've been doing just because our brains like to slip into comfort pathways and we just do the things that we've always been doing. And then you have to disrupt that pattern a little bit, which is uncomfortable for some of us. And you just need to start doing things differently. I'm going to give you some substitutions here in a minute as well, because I know you're thinking like I'm the fun police, which I definitely am sometimes. The other thing is when you are tracking, you need to track immediately. Now, I know I mentioned this earlier, and retro tracking is something we see a lot of clients do, but I'm going to urge you to not do that. And yes, it is one more thing to do, one more thing you got to do before you start inhaling your food. You can pre-do this. You can do this the night before if you want to like be real methodical and like plan out your breakfast or whatever. And you can always be like one meal ahead, right? Which basically, like for me, what I would do in the early days of tracking macros is I would, before bed, I'd be laying in bed and, just on my phone, be like, oh, okay, what do I want to have for breakfast tomorrow? And like, yeah, in the morning, I might change my mind, but the likelihood is rare, right? I was always rotating between the same like 3 things. So I'd be like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to have like my oatmeal pancakes, right? So I'd open up my Fitness Pal and I'd start like, I would save some recipes, which is a little more of an advanced technique, but super easy. You can save, some recipes in there. And I would plug that in. I'd be like, okay, sweet. Down to like how much creamer I was going to use. If I was using a low calorie syrup, that was going to be in there because I'm going to measure it. I'm going to assume I'm going to use like a 1/4 of a cup. Am I going to use maybe an almond butter or a peanut butter or something like that? Am I going to have like 16 or 20 grams, right? And like mapping that out the night before. I know it sounds like a lot of math and a lot of a pain in the ass, but let me tell you, again, this will save you if you just get through this like part of resistance, because it gets easier and then you're just like, oh, this is simple, right? It's just like a little video game you play. Then when I would sit down to have my breakfast, I would make sure it all lined up with what I planned the night before. Sometimes I would change it. That's okay too. And then as I'm finishing my breakfast, I would open up my Fitness Pal and I would say, okay, did I do anything different? Did I add anything? Maybe I wasn't feeling like having, peanut butter or whatever, because I want to have more fats later in the day. So I would then decide, okay, what am I going to have for lunch? And then I would go in and I would start to plan my lunch and put it all in there. And it kind of like presets your brain to like, this is what we're doing. Okay. You're not going to get shiny object syndrome and then jump in your car and go to Chipotle or, whatever. Like you have your little plan in place. Now that's one tool. That's one way of like getting ahead, just one meal ahead. I would love to sit here and say like plan out your whole day. That's not a strategy that overwhelms me, right? That's a Coach Glitter strategy. She likes to plan out her whole day and have it lined up. That's not me. I like to go rogue sometimes and change my mind, and I don't want to have to stress about inputting the whole day. So another option is you can decide your foods at point of, and then before you eat, take a picture of your food. Right? I know, very Instagram influencer of you, but take a picture of your food. If you don't have time to track it and enter it in at point of, then you at least have a visual representation and you can use that for memory recall, right? Like later on, maybe at lunch or something, you're going to sit down and you're going to plug in your previous meal and your lunch, however you're going to do it. But you can bring that up and you can be like, okay, yep, I did put some hummus on that sandwich and then I had some chips and whatever, right? You can start to plug that in. So that's those are a couple ways that you can stay on track with getting your numbers in there, because retro tracking is going to set you up for failure. Now, if you have glistened off and got distracted, come back to me, my friends, because we're going to talk about some swap outs that I love and that I use for a lot of these items that I mentioned earlier that were always easy for me to just rack up the calories. Okay. And these are just a few because, who can really replace M&Ms? Like nobody. Hummus. Okay. If you are a mayo lover, listen, I get it. Mayo, I've never been a huge fan. I know. But it's because I just know that it's like, there's like no nutritional value. Okay. And while there are other things that I consume that have no nutritional value, I then become what I've coined as a food snob. I will gladly pass on 100 calories of mayonnaise if that means I can have 100 calories of chocolate. You see where I'm going with this, right? Like you got to pick your poison. And so a lot of times for me, that's how I move through my day, right? Like, sure, I would love to have a turkey or a BLT on like a super juicy mayo filled piece of bread. And also, I know that I'm willing to sacrifice that. It's like, I'm not going to cry if I don't have mayonnaise. Like, just use some like Dijon or something like that. And then I know that I can use that 100 calories that I was going to use on mayo on like a Ghirardelli chocolate square, right? Similar macros, definitely satisfaction factor for the chocolate is going to be way higher for me than it is on having mayo. Now, if you're more of a savory kind of gal or guy, that might not work for you, right? You might want to spend 100 calories elsewhere. You got to think of your macros as a budget for the day, right? It's your checking account, and you don't want those overdraft fees because they just land on your scale, and then you got to call the bank and explain, and hopefully they reverse your charges. But that's not going to happen in the real world. So again, some swap outs, realizing that they're not like the real thing. Hummus is a great alternative for mayonnaise. There are so many flavors out there. You will find hummus in the refrigerated like deli meat area usually, and like where they have like the refrigerated salsas. So there are a plethora of options, right? A huge popular one is like a garlic hummus. There's like a lemon zest, and there's a red pepper, there is a black bean hummus, there is a lentil hummus. They have so many different flavors. It's a fraction of the calories, and honestly, I feel like they taste better. And you will get some added macronutrients in hummus that you're not going to get in mayonnaise, right? There's a little bit of protein, a trace amount of fats, and then, obviously some carbs. So you will get some benefits to that. The second thing is replacing your full fat butter for spray butter. Now, I know all of you nutrition zealots out there are screaming and typing in the comments about how I'm going to grow a third eyeball or something like that. And to that, I say, look at the phone in your hands, and you're probably going to grow a third eyeball by being on your phone, watching me because of the radioactive waves and shit like that. Okay. So pick your battles. I am not consuming copious amounts of spray butter, but when I have it maybe once a week, I'm going to use that in an effort to trim back some calories. And the key here is moderation in all things, my friends. So don't, just douse it and you're pouring your spray butter, because there are, and if you Google it, some people who have looked at the nutrition content of the spray butter, and it is indeed not 0 calories, and you have to make sure you do so many sprays and for so many seconds. I'm like, listen, a couple sprays, bitch, just a couple sprays. So you're not eating the full fat butter. Move on. All right. The next thing, kind of on the same rant, is when you're cooking and you think you're being healthy by drizzling all that olive oil to cook your foods or bake your foods or whatever. Great. It's going to taste amazing. It's going to give it this great flavor profile. And you think you're being like a healthy, amazing, healthy person. Okay. I can't even think of a better word for that. You think you're being like just incredibly healthy because you're like, oh my God, I'm using olive oil. It's not canola. Well, it still has calories. So while yes, from a health profile perspective, for sure, using an olive oil is going to be better than something like a, lard or a canola oil or something like that. At the end of the day, the conversation here is calories and fat loss. And so that's something you have to consider, right? A heavy-handed olive oil all over your food is going to rack that up. So instead of that, you want to look for a spray, and you can get a spray olive oil, and they have some great ones that aren't aerosol, which is what I prefer. And it's just a light coating, just a light smattering. Okay. And you can find other ways to cook your food that don't require so much addition by way of fats to make them taste good, right? One of which is you can use an air fryer, you can bake them, you can broil, you can kind of like pan sear with like a little bit of broth, right? So spray pan, don't douse it in oil, okay? Then we have the infamous coffee drinks. Now, I could go on and on and on about how so many people, and I'm people, okay? Let's remember, I can talk shit because I did all these things. I was driving through Starbucks almost every single day, wondering why, there's other reasons why I was broke back in the day when I was a single mom and doing all the things, but I'm like, I couldn't get ahead because I was spending frivolously on like my $6 coffee every day and driving through. And this was just a habit. It was either me or the office manager. And we were like, I'd pay her, she'd pay me, but it was like every day. And we had a coffee machine at at the office. There was no reason, but it's fun, right? We love that. And I'm not trying to take away your Starbucks treats. However, I will urge you to take a look at what you're ordering at Starbucks and know that you can make something equally as delicious at home. I know it's not as fun, but equally as delicious at home for a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the calories. Okay. So simple hacks for this is getting some stevia. You could do liquid drops. They have a ton of different flavors, or you could do the little stevia packets, and buying some creamer, right? You can do a regular full calorie creamer, or you could do a sugar-free creamer. I just prefer sugar-free because I don't use very much. So I'm not pouring, it's not like, oh, have some coffee with your creamer, right? I know some of y'all are guilty because creamer just be delicious, but it's just a smattering of creamer. And usually it's a tablespoon and some stevia, little with my little frother, and we're good to go. Okay. So making some alternative options. Now, the good news is, I know this is a lot coming at you, and it can feel like, I don't know, there's so many things, I don't know where to start. We created a plateau buster guide. What is that, you ask? Not that you asked, but I'm going to tell you. This is going to be a PDF download for you, and it is essentially going to tell you about hidden calories that are ruining your results. Now, it's a freebie for y'all. You'll see the link in the description, so make sure to pause right now because y'all gonna forget. Pause right now. If you're on the YouTubes, you see my finger all up in your face, pause, and then go click, download, come back, subscribe, leave a comment. I know that's a lot, but download the freebie, okay? We created this, more specifically, my daughter, Alicia, for the Goddess Body Project girls. So we're going to give this to you guys because this is something that we want you to get ahead of, okay? We want you to start taking some proactive steps of realizing the little shit that's getting in your way. So go take that. Let me know how you do with that, right? And I would love to know if there's anything else that you do that you can share with the community. So if you're here on YouTube, if there's any hacks or anything that you do to save some calories, please let us know. Okay. Now, to wrap this all up, you have to be patient. So if you have been frustrated for some time and you're going through the motions and you're now realizing like, oh shit, like this is probably why I forgot about, the Lenny and Larry's cookies I've been having every day at lunch are really 2 servings and not 1. I'm so sorry I had to ruin that for you, but listen, somebody had to do it. I'm glad it was me. You have to give it some time. So make these changes. Like I said, download that guide because you're going to see some other things that I didn't mention here in the podcast that might be culprits to you being stuck with your fat loss. And if you're stuck, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to quit. You're going to diet hop. You're going to do all the things when we could have just did a little bit of research into what your day entails and putting you in charge of figuring out what it is that's getting in your way. Now, that list is going to have some exhaustive stuff on there that's going to help you figure some shit out, right? Like Alicia, Coach Ish the Beast over on Instagram, my daughter, she's a coach on my team and was a barista over at Starbucks for many, many years. And she came up with a nice long list of what, if you normally order this, do this instead. It's like an eat this, not that. Do you guys remember that from back in the day? So lots of examples for coffee orders at Starbucks to keep it really simple, still have that, feeling that joy of like going through the drive-through and that whole experience, which I totally get. So she has some on there. The other things is she does have, along with like my suggestions, some tips for making better coffee at home, which, I mean, who better to take that from a previous barista, right? She very much values and treasures her coffee time and actually coffee anywhere. So she's got this down to a science. So that there are some tips for that in there as well. She goes over liquid calories, which there are so many that I couldn't even list them all here as far as some of the, main offenders. So she's going to mention some of those in that guide for you as well. Some common BLTs, bites, licks, and tastes that you don't even think about that you're doing. That's also in the guide. And then hidden calories when dining out, which is another huge one. So make sure to download that. It's a great resource and it just kind of enlightens you to some things that maybe you didn't even realize you were doing. So just remember, Boss Bitch Bestie, this is a journey, okay? You aren't going to figure this all out just by listening to one podcast. It's going to take some time, especially if you're used to interacting with yourself and food, and the dieting process in one way for a long time. It's going to take some time to relearn new habits, try new things, and I urge you, because oftentimes what happens is you go into, let's say, a diet or a program, right? We're seeing it in the Goddess Body Project right now. And you aren't used to making some of these healthier swap outs. And you already have a little bit of a resistance, right? Because you're like, this is not how I be normally eating. Okay. So you already feel a type of way that's not positive about having to make better choices for your health. And then you make a recipe or you try a thing or you find a thing on Instagram and it tastes like dog shit, which that happens. Let me tell you, that happens. And it can be a number of things. A lot of times that happens when you're trying to make some kind of like protein baked goodie or something like that, because you have the wrong protein and you didn't use the right ingredients to make that translate into not dog shit. Okay. So you have to know that this is a process and don't give up the first time. So if you make a recipe or you like tried a vegetable or whatever, and you're like, ugh, I hate, like right now, my boyfriend and I have the standing joke because he hates asparagus. He's never eaten asparagus. How do you know you don't like something if you've never even tried it, right? Like these are the conversations I just have had with my children over the years, right? Just try a bite, right? And then if you don't like it, maybe you give it a try another time, but you cook it differently, right? Maybe one time you grill it. Grilled asparagus is amazing with a squeeze of lemon, a little bit of Himalayan sea salt, maybe some, garlic pepper or something. If you don't like that, try a different seasoning, try it in the air fryer, try it in the oven, steam it. However, you got to play around with the methods and not be so adhered to the fact that like, oh, I don't like it. It's gross. Like my mom used to make me eat it every time. I realize there's some childhood trauma there, but let's work through that. And part of that is experimenting. And now you're an adult and now you can make your own choices. And now you can decide how that's going to be cooked. And you have a plethora of resources at your fingertips called the internet and Google, the world's best research assistant. And you can try, give me 3 ways on how to cook asparagus, chat GPT, that shit. Okay. And experiment, make it fun, have your kids help you, have your partner help you, make it a date night for yourself, whatever you need to do. And just use this as time to experiment, right? Instead of just saying like, I can't eat healthy, that food's gross and right? It's going to take some practice. So just remember, boss bitch bestie, I love you. I love you. This is that a heart? That's like a circle. It's kind of a peach. Oh, did you see that? I did it on Zoom. Y'all, you need to go watch this on the YouTubes just for the heart hands. Let me see. I don't think I could do it again. Of course not. Oh, there she is because I love you. Okay. I would be forever grateful if you sat here and listened to me rattle off for over 30 minutes. If you go over to Apple and you are on my page, right, where all the episodes are like listed and you kind of like scroll up. It's kind of hard to find. Thanks, Apple. You didn't make this easy for us. Just scroll up and you'll see like the 5-star reviews. And right above that big 5, where you see a lot of our reviews, we got lots of reviews over the years. It'll say like, read more or write a review. Touch that. And then just let me know, because we're reading those reviews now. Just as our reviews are rolling in, we're reading reviews of the day. I would love to feature your review on one of our podcasts. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't it be fun to just hear your name? Everyone loves the sound of their own name. So, all right, you guys, again, we're in this together. I got your back. I'm your motherfucking boss bitch bestie, and I'll see you next time. Boss bitch.